Welcome back. This is Mr. Shanahan for Sociology, Magnet Sociology. This is Chapter 15, Science in the Mass Media. Section 1 will be on science as a social institution. Section 2 will be on the mass media as a social institution. Our objective for Section 1 is identify the factors that have contributed to the institutionalization of science and explain how the norms of the scientific research differ from the realities of scientific research. So, for this section, you will explain how advances in science and technology have changed individual societal behavior. Then you'll describe the development of science as a social institution, and then you'll compare and contrast the norms and realities of science. The institution of science emerged as a recognizable system of study in Greece during the 300s BCE and was reborn in Europe in the 1300s as a result of the following factors. The scientific revolution emerged in the 1500s and industrialization that led to the emergence of modern science in the late 1800s. The institutionalization of science in the West. Science is the pursuit of knowledge throughout the systematic method is central feature of all industrialized countries. Its status as an institution is recent. For most of history, we have looked to the supernatural to solve our questions of the unknown. Sociology of science is an investigation of how scientific knowledge develops and influences society. Science emerges recognizable system of study in 300 BCE in Greece with the great thinkers as Aristotle and Plato. During the Hellenistic age, this knowledge spread to Egypt, Rome, and beyond. During the Roman Empire, however, the quest for learning slowed. After the fall of the Roman Empire, most science was used in terms of supporting religion. And this is why it's often known as the Dark Age, because science declined into a secondary role. Four main factors contributing to the rebirth of science. The Renaissance that began in Italy in the late 1300s produced an enormous wealth and trade that encouraged the arts and sciences. The development of movable type metal printing press allowed the rapid spread of ideas. This allowed ideas to be mass-produced and distributed throughout all of Europe and beyond. The birth of the age of exploration that begins in the 1400s led to many new discoveries, and it was the ideas of the printing press and new advances in science that made that exploration possible. The Protestant Reformation challenged the authority of religion and made it possible for thinkers to be able to think beyond what the church determined. The scientific revolution began in the 1500s. Scientists used the scientific method as an objective, systematic way of collecting information and arriving at conclusions. Science could merge with technology to solve problems. The Enlightenment soon encouraged the support of reason over religion and encouraged education and democracy. Modern science did not become widely significant until the late 1800s. It brought about as a result of the industrialization. Science helped fuel this industrialization process by developing new techniques that could be converted to industrial growth. Industrialization was about technology and progress, using science as a means of making bigger, better, and fast ways of producing goods. By the late 1900s, the leading science associations were in place. Specialization of science also reinforced the professionalization of science. The needs of government and industry replaced curiosity, and science began to fulfill the needs in medicine and military goals in order to serve, and economic goals to serve the government. Our norms and realities of science, the norms of science are universalism, organized skepticism, communalism, and disinterestedness. The realities of science, however, are fraud, competition, a thing known as the Matthew effect, and conflicting views of reality. Robert K. Merton, the modern scientific, said that according to Robert K. Merton, the modern scientific community is guided by 4 basic norms. These norms are universalism, organized skepticism, communalism, and disinterestedness. Universalism holds that scientific research should be judged solely on the basis of quality, race, gender, nationality, and religion, have no factor on the validity of science. This helps ensure the pursuit of scientific research is open to everyone. Organized skepticism, however, holds that no scientific finding or theory is exempt for questioning. Scientists are supposed to suspend judgment until sufficient facts have been collected. It ensures that science will not stagnate. Communalism is the belief that all scientific knowledge should be available to everyone in the scientific community. The findings belong to the community, not the individual. This is important because new discoveries build on current findings. You never know, what you discover might help somebody else solve a different problem if they only knew what you knew. Communalism ensures scientists continue to have access to existing knowledge. Finally, we have disinterestedness. Disinterestedness is the scientists should seek truth not for personal gain. Research should be chosen without reference to possible awards, political or religious criteria, or currently popular views. Scientists should not alter their data in an effort to gain acceptance. And finally, they should not unfairly criticize the work of others who contradict their own work. The counter norms, however, of science, researchers generally accept and follow the norms in principle. However, if the issues are not well defined or are controversial, scientists often adopt a set of counter norms. Particularism, instead of universalism, bases the evaluation of the work not on the quality, but on personal characteristics. They abandon organized skepticism in favor of dogmatism and accept their own findings. They reject communalism in favor of solitariness, making research their own property. And then they reject disinterestedness, for the interest decisions are based on organizational support. And fraud is often a problem, since it leads to research built on false information. The most famous case of this was about vaccinations, where the doctor produced a case saying that vaccinations caused autism. His research was then largely debunked and proven repeatedly that it was incorrect, yet to this day we still have a group of people that still cite this debunked study and follow the practice of anti-vaxxing. Competition is the fear of being beaten, causes scientists to violate norms. This also leads to misinformation. Then we have the Matthew effect. The Matthew effect is when honors and recognition tend to go to those scientists who have already achieved recognition. This comes from a Bible verse that states that for to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who has not even what he has will be taken away. The Matthew Effect states that scientists with prestige and name recognition will get credit regardless of his effort on the team. And this is why oftentimes scientists will pick a person with a prestigious name in order to lend credibility to their study. That person may not play an active role. However, when they publish their results, it will draw more attention because of the prestige of that particular person. It will thus add to their prestige and lend legitimacy to the research. However, it could interfere with the ability of those other scientists to be able to move along in their career, seen more as supporting characters than the actual leaders of the ideas. And so this can hamper the spread of new ideas. Period. People will go with the view that they accept and will often ignore the facts. Thomas Kuhn coined the term paradigm, the set shared of concepts, methods, and assumptions that make up a scientific reality at any point. Paradigms determine what topics are appropriate for scientific inquiry. They not only establish the methods that can be used to collect and analyze data, but they also identify the interpretation of data that are acceptable. New paradigms are often slow to gain acceptance and are controversial, but later come into favor. So, are you able to explain how advances in science and technology have changed individual societal behavior? Can you describe the development of science as a social institution? Can you compare and contrast the norms and realities of science? Section 2, the mass media. Our objective is trace the major developments in the history of mass media and identify the types of mass media in the United States. Then we'll explain how sociological perspectives of mass media differ and discuss some of the contemporary mass media issues. Our questions to answer for this section are: what are technological innovations that mark the institutionalization of mass media? What is the functionalist perspective of mass media? What is the conflict perspective of mass media? And evaluate what mass media influence on children has been. Assess the effect of mass media on civic and social life, and judge what the power in shaping public opinion seems to be. Mass media are instruments of communication that reach large audiences with no personal contact between those sending the information and those receiving the information. Writing and paper is a written language was needed to record business and other transactions. Eventually, paper was developed, and sometime between 3100 and 2500 BCE in China. The printing press during the 1450s was developed by Johannes Gutenberg, and he developed movable type printing press. His books became inexpensive and widespread. Distribution of books of information became possible throughout Europe, spreading the idea of differing ideas in research and travel, which led to the expansion of ideas, both social, political, and scientific. Then came the Industrial Age. With the rising standards of education and increasing requirements for factory work and life in the city, more people learned to read and write, and it also made it possible for workers to be able to take on more in their jobs. People had to be able to read the dials on the machines and understand the gauges and things like that, and this made the industrial age flourish, so through media. During the Industrial Revolution, the factory became the sources of goods production. Populations moved from the farm to the city. Skilled labor became necessary, leading to the need for better educated workers. The more education, the more efficient the workers became. Better educated workers received better pay, thus giving people an incentive to get a better education. Better pay led workers to having disposable income. To gain access to this income, producers began advertising. Urbanization and literacy in advertising led to the growth of newspapers. Advertisements in newspapers largely pay for the workers, not the actual sale of the newspapers. By 1900s, communication added the telegraph, the telephone, movies, radio, and then finally television. The Computer and Information Society, the digital computer, completely transformed the way people store and access information. The internet has made it possible to have access to millions of resources. 50% of workers in the U.S. are employed in the information-related fields. The USA has an information society, a community in which the exchange of information is the main social and economic activity. The print media include newspapers, magazines, and books. Audio media is sound recordings and radio and online streaming. Visual media is movies, television, video cassettes, and DVDs, as well as online streaming. And then, of course, you have the online media, which is the internet, where there's all kinds of streaming and other activities that you can do online. The print media includes newspapers, magazines, and books. The USA has about 1,300 daily newspapers, and there are about 7,000 magazines as of 2019. Americans spend around $30 billion on books every year, and 40% of households read 10 books per year. Newspapers are in decline, however, and magazines are less read, and 24% of Americans have not read a book in the last year. Sound recording is one of the major industries in the United States. The industry made $12 billion, down from $14.3 billion in 2000. There are close to 15,451 radio stations in the United States as of 2019, and 99% of homes in the U.S. have a radio. 75% of Americans are thought to listen to the radio on a daily basis. Movie studios release around 700 movies every year, and they're worth about $38 billion as of 2019. 98% of American homes have a TV, with two being the average, and 68% of homes have cable TV. The World Wide Web offers particularly every imaginable subject to the individual user. People are using the internet to shop, go to school, for entertainment, and networking with their friends. More than 83% of households now have the internet as of 2019, and they use it regularly. Some specialists believe that the media is merging and refer to this as media convergence. They are no longer separate, where technologies merge together. This is leading to a single media source, technology based on the computer. Most Americans watch TV more than they use all other media. Newspaper and book readership increases with education. People with higher incomes have access to cable, satellite, and internet media services, and 40% of moviegoers are under the age of 30. The functionalist perspective focuses on ways in which the mass media help to preserve social stability. To be productive members of society, people need to be informed, and the media serves this purpose. Mass media influences socialization by passing on society's basic skills, values, and beliefs. Mass media is also a function of entertainment for society. The conflict perspective, however, focuses on how mass media serve to maintain the existing social order. Some believe that the role of mass media is to accept the existing power structure. Because the mass media is owned by the power elite, the information it presents are the ideas of the power elite. The knowledge gap hypothesis states that as new information enters society, wealthy, better educated members acquire information faster and at a greater rate than poor people and who are less educated and have less access to information. The digital divide is the gap between those with access to new technologies and those without. Misinformation is about minorities that reinforce social inequality. Influence on children. Most children watch 28 hours of TV or more a week. TV and violence is studied extensively. In 1997, a rating system was put in place, and all TVs are required to have a V-chip. This allows parents to be able to set when children can watch the television or what they can watch. The more students watch TV, the lower their grades. And this goes for all screens, not just for TV. Children see between 20,000 and 40,000 advertisements per year, and children accept claims more than adults do when it comes to advertising. Contemporary mass media issues that it has a dramatic effect on civic and social life, social interaction, church-going, civic involvement, even entertaining guests has declined as a result of mass media entertainment options. Social capital and the social networks that encourage people to do things for each other. TV and internet are thought to be the cause of this decline. Power in shaping public opinion. The media has great power in shaping public opinion. 75% of Americans believe that news media has too much power, and there's a spiral of silence. And the agenda setting of media are examples. The saturation of opinion discourages dissent. This is known as a spiral of silence. The agenda setting that the media sets public opinion by deciding what is worth talking about. Gatekeepers are the media executives who set what the agenda is. They determine if we're going to talk about war or taxes or the budget or healthcare. So, were you able to answer what are the technological innovations that mark the institutionalization of mass media? What is the functionalist perspective of mass media? What is the conflict perspective of mass media? Evaluate what the mass media influence on children has been. Assess the effect of mass media on civic and social life. Judge what power in shaping public opinion seems to be. This concludes our study of Chapter 15. I hope you found this useful, and we can discuss that. We'll continue on with Chapter 16 next. Thank you for listening.